King Rockefeller here, back with another video reaction, and today we're going to be doing another MrBallen video. This one is top 3 places you can't go, and people who went anyways. I don't know what part this is. There's a lot of them, so this might be part 2, part 3, part 5. I don't really know, but yeah, it's a MrBallen video, so those are always, you know, creepy, mysterious, you know, scary sometimes, and sometimes sad. But yeah, these are some of his best videos, the top 3 video episodes. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into this episode and see what happens. Let's go ahead.
I think we all like to believe that the whole world is accessible to us if we just had the time or the money, or maybe both. But in today's video, I'm going to shatter that illusion and share with you a top 3 list of places you can't go, no matter how much money or time you might have. And for each of these locations, I'll share with you an instance of someone going there anyways and what happened to them. Spoiler, it didn't end well. But before we get into today's top 3
I'm very
list,
sure.
if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place. Because that's all I do, and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. If that's of interest to you, then please give the like button a one-way ticket to North Sentinel Island. Also, please subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's story.
The gate to hell.
In the early 1990s,
not going there
he turns on his camera, flips on his light, and starts filming. As the viewer, all we can tell is that he's in this gray hallway. It's very unclear where he is. It does appear to be something that might be underground because everything seems to be concrete. As he's filming, he begins walking down this narrow corridor where there's nothing on the walls or on the ground or anywhere to give away where he is. And so for the first 40 seconds of him just walking down this kind of meandering hallway, it's very uneventful. Then at some point, he aims his camera at what looks like an arrow that's been spray painted on the wall. He looks down at the ground.
Gates of hell.
Arrow. He starts to follow the arrows, and he's filming each one.
It said gates of hell, and you kept going forward?
The main hallway, and at some point, the arrow.
Whatever happened to him?
Which at first you can't tell what it is, but then as the camera
you deserved it.
See that there was this massive pile of human remains, skeletal remains. The guy filming does not.
Are you
seem
serious?
alarmed by what he's seeing. In fact, it seems like he came here knowing he might come across this room full of human remains. After staring at this room for a few
he was
moments,
looking
he doesn't
for
go
it.
in, but instead turns and continues following these
All
arrows
right.
and strange markings on the wall and the ground as it brings him farther and farther down this other corridor to more rooms with more skeletal remains. And at some point he comes to a full stop and he's looking at one of these rooms and something spooks him. It's unclear what it is because to this point he's been very nonchalant about this horrible thing he's looking at. It didn't seem to faze him at all, but something did spook him because he's standing there and then all of a sudden he starts sprinting down the hall. Now, it's clear at this point in the video that he is alone down here, or at least he thinks he's alone down here. But he's running as if someone's chasing him. And he just takes off down this hall. The camera's now dropped to his side. He's not even trying to film what's in front of him. You hear his breathing and it's very panicked. And at some point he kind of trips and drops.
I wonder what he saw.
The camera comes to rest in this puddle, looking right up against the wall. So you don't have a clear view of where this guy is or what's going on. And all you hear is his panicked breathing and his rapid footsteps as he continues to run down the hallway and eventually it disappears and it's totally silent. And at some point the camera runs out of batteries and it turns off. 10 years later, a group of urban explorers would find this man's
10 years?
Where he had dropped it 10 years
Did he ever get out?
In one of the scariest places on Earth. Hundreds of feet below the streets of Paris, France, lies one of the world's largest mass graves. It's known as the Paris Catacombs.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
Miles of intricate passageways that loop
there's a
all
movie.
over the city.
I think there's a movie about that too.
6 million people have been buried.
I forget what it's called, but there's a movie about that.
In the 17th century in Paris, the cemeteries in the city were overflowing. And so the decision was made to move their bodies down underneath the streets of Paris into these tunnels that were built in the 13th century for mining, but had not been used in hundreds of years. And so they began packing in all these people to the tune of 6 million bodies before they ultimately stopped doing that.
Oh my goodness.
Starting in the late 1800s, the catacombs became sort of a popular tourist destination, but only a tiny section of the catacombs was made open to the public, meaning there are literally hundreds of miles of passageways in the catacombs that are totally sealed off to the public. no one goes in there. Even though many people,
so nobody knows like
in
what's
these
down there.
sections of the catacombs, there are entrances to additional levels of the catacombs. That there could be as much as 400 miles of passageways in the catacombs just waiting to be explored, but no one's allowed to go in there. At least not.
Oh,
there's an entire
no, they have to be
that are
hiding
sneaking
something
into the forbidden section of the catacombs.
I feel like they're hiding
going through
something.
sewer
Like there's
drains
a
and
like
getting on
a
the train tracks and sneaking into these little cracks in the side of the walls. I mean, it's incredibly dangerous. It involves wriggling your way into these 13th century tunnels that are unmapped, pitch black, and no one knows you're there. Not to mention, you're surrounded by literally
I would
millions of dead
never.
people. Once people
I
started
would
figuring
never.
out how to sneak into the forbidden section of the catacombs, there's been countless stories of these urban explorers sneaking in, getting lost, and never coming out again. Which is exactly what we think happened to the guy with the camera who saw the arrows and then ran away. His camera was located miles and miles into one of those forbidden sections.
What? M cave.
In 2014, Kenny Veach was an avid long-distance hiker that spent lots of his time hiking around the Mojave Desert in search of caves and abandoned mine shafts to go check out. Sometimes he'd bring his girlfriend with him, but most of the time he was on his own and he would stay out for a couple of days at a time. Kenny was constantly on YouTube watching hiking videos and anything to do with the Mojave Desert. And Kenny was a regular commenter on all of those types of videos. In June of 2014, Kenny must have watched this video called Son of an Area 51 Technician because he had left this comment where he was telling the community that had watched this video that he had had a very strange thing happen to him when he was out hiking near Area 51. For those that don't know what Area 51 is,
aliens.
It's a highly confidential
Yeah, we
United
know.
States Air Force
Where they keep the aliens.
It's frequently looped into alien conspiracy theories.
Uh-huh.
Kenny goes on to describe
Conspiracies.
this strange event.
Uh-huh.
He said he found this cave entrance.
No
inside
aliens
this
are really
mountain
there.
That was shaped like an uppercase M. As Kenny walks up to enter this M-shaped cave, he said his body started to vibrate and it stopped him in his tracks. And he said he didn't know what it was, but as he walked closer and closer, his body just continued to vibrate to the point where he said he just had to turn around and leave. That he knew something was wrong with this cave and he could not go inside. And so he said he turned around and he left. His comment got a lot of traction on this video, and a lot of people jumped on and were like, well, I don't really believe you, one, but if that is true, you gotta go back. You gotta go back there and explore it. You gotta document this.
If it was true, why would you encourage him to go back and do that?
Egging him on to go back
I swear,
and check it out. Kenny responded
people
to
on the
his critics
internet
and said,
just
I'm telling you the truth. I know what I saw.
They just want to
this cave
see
was
something
different.
happen.
I go out in the desert all the
Don't
time
listen.
looking for caves, and I go in them. That's what I do. This one was different, and that's why I didn't go in it. But people just kept egging him on to go back and check it out and to film it, show documentation of this thing. And so finally he agrees. A couple of months later, Kenny goes back out to the Mojave Desert with his camera and he films himself looking for the M cave, but he can't find it. So the video's kind of a bust. He still uploads it to YouTube and he tells everyone that he's gonna go back out again. He knows where it is, he's fairly confident that he can get to it again, but he just needs to go out a third time to go look for it. Over the course of the next month, in the comment section of that video, people are encouraging Kenny and saying, go out there, go find it, we're so excited. One commenter was not so encouraging. Their name was Lemmy Killmeister, and they wrote on his video,
No, do not go back.
Go to MK. If you go
Exactly.
in,
Somebody with common sense, who
Kenny, go
cares?
back. What do you mean? And Lemmy Killmeister didn't respond and subsequently vanished from YouTube. Kenny brushes this off, and on November 10th,
That might have been somebody from the government
he's back out once again
telling you
trying
not to
find
do it.
M Cave. On November 14th, when he had not returned and his girlfriend had not heard from him and couldn't get in touch with him,
Oh, here we
she called
go.
the police. The police launched this massive search.
It's over.
They knew roughly where he was going to be because he had documented it so aggressively on his YouTube channel. And so they search in that area, and after about a week, they find his cell phone, and it was laying outside of an abandoned mine shaft. Now, immediately, searchers think, well, he must have fallen into this mine shaft that was almost a vertical mine shaft. He must have fallen in there to his death. So they get a camera and they feed it down into this mine shaft, and there's no one in there. And very clearly, no one had been down this mine shaft in a very long time. Certainly not Kenny. There were no tracks.
So where did he go?
His phone was located, so no animal tracks or people tracks. And the phone didn't have blood on it or scratches on it. It was just sitting there with no new information. Beyond the cell phone, they had nothing else to go on, and eventually the search was terminated. Kenny never turned up. He was just gone after that. While it's pretty easy for people to chalk up this whole M Cave thing as total nonsense and that they believe all that happened is Kenny went out into the wilderness of the Mojave Desert and ultimately got lost and died, and that's fair, I do want to offer up one thing about his description of being near the cave, that first time he saw it. He described his body vibrating to the point where he couldn't go any further and he had to turn around and leave. The United States military uses these things called access denial systems around their highly classified installations. Anywhere where you cannot risk someone getting in, like a fence isn't good enough, they use these machines that fire beams at people that get too close. They're non-lethal, but it's like being thrust inside of a microwave. You feel hot and really uncomfortable. And
so he was being hit with like lasers?
The fact that Kenny was right near Area 51, a highly confidential area.
They're hiding something in Area 51.
Conspiracies. It's a known, highly
It's not a conspiracy, it's the truth.
He's discovering strange
because why do they want to keep people out so bad?
Cave entrances, and he's walking up to it, describing basically what it feels like to be hit with an access denial system. It makes you wonder, did he discover some secret entrance to some secret base? Or is this a bunch of crap and he just got lost in the desert and died? We don't know.
No, I'm going to go with the first one.
His search for M Cave probably ended his life. And that's why you should never go looking for M Cave.
No, I don't believe he just
as the sun began to set on August 18th, 2010, Ben McDaniel,
something happened.
Walked to the end of the pier, put on all of his diving equipment, and jumped in the water. He slowly descended 115 feet and came to a stop right in front of a very famous underwater sign. The sign very clearly tells anybody who sees it, do not go any farther unless you are absolutely certain this is the right thing for you to be doing. If you go farther, you're probably going to die, like the 300 other people
and let me
guess, died doing this particular
Let me guess what he did.
He swam right past that sign and went 300 feet to the very famous underwater locked gate. Now,
and I'm supposed to feel bad?
To this are extremely experienced divers, and even they don't typically go into this area because it's so dangerous. Ben was not one of the very experienced divers that was given a key.
Oh,
but he still desperately wanted to get.
So he's smart. Okay.
So he's sitting there yanking on the gate, and he's getting himself kind of pushed inside halfway through the gate, and he can't quite get it open. And another diver saw him doing this and was actually concerned that Ben was going to get trapped on the gate itself and would just drown on the gate. And so this diver comes over and uses his key, and maybe against his better judgment opened it, thinking that that was better than him getting.
Why would you do that?
And turns to Logan, gives him a nod, thank you, and he, on his own, swims into one of, if not the single most dangerous underwater caves in the whole world. It's called Vortex Spring Cave. From the locked cave, this cave extends another 1,600 feet and goes down to a depth of 310 feet. The majority of this section of the cave is mapped, but there are sections that are not fully explored because they're so narrow, where you have to literally take off your gear, wriggle through a hole, pull your gear through and put it back on. All the while you're barely holding onto your mouthpiece. And so really the full extent of this section of the cave is
like who would want to risk
exactly
that?
What
like
Ben did when he went through that
who would want to do that? That does not sound like fun.
I do know that he didn't come out again. And after a couple of days and no one had seen him, they launched this massive search for him, and they combed as much as they could of inside of that cave, but there were sections that they were just not prepared to go search. And so he was never recovered. All they ever found were 2 of Ben's dive bottles. As a total side note, when I was reading about the Vortex Spring Cave, it reminded me of some of the things that we did when I was in the Navy SEAL teams. And one of my least favorite things to do is when we would be swimming in and around ships. We would go under barges. And so a barge has a flat bottom. And sometimes they sit really close to the bottom of the ocean, but there's a little space under there where you can maneuver. And so we would go underneath these barges where there was only a few feet of clearance, and it's totally pitch black. And you're swimming in just total blackness where you're so claustrophobic. You're basically tight in this little space where you're just hoping that nothing causes this barge to sink on me. And by the time you get out, there's a huge sense of relief.
Yeah, no, I would never.
Number one on my list, because for me, the idea of being trapped in a little tiny alcove inside of an underwater.
Yeah, that sounds crazy. That's
running out of air.
I'm not doing that.
Pitch
no.
black. I mean, that is just the absolute.
I would have to be dishonorably discharged or something.
Which of these 3 places you might actually?
Yeah, like I just really don't understand. Like people doing all these things. I mean, the first story. I mean, I don't understand people. Like, you're being warned, and you still choose to do something that's dangerous and gonna end your life. And in all three of these situations, it did end the life. So I mean, like, come on. Like, I mean, I understand wanting adventure, but like, I understand wanting to be be adventurous, but why do people like to? Some people like to risk their lives. Like, that's not adventure. That's just being stupid. Oh, I mean, all three of these stories. I mean, I just hate when people, die, and it's like something that they could have prevented. Like, you could have just not went, or you could have just read the signs, or you could have just, followed your better judgment. And it's just unfortunate, and it's frustrating when people just, throw away their lives when they could just follow the rules. I mean, it's not worth it to be that adventurous. I mean, there's so many other adventurous things to do. Go skydiving, go bungee jumping, go do something else. Go wrestle an alligator or something. Like, I mean, it's just so stupid, just so preventable, just so avoidable. Like, you didn't have to do any of this, but that's how you end up on the MrBallen list, and that's how we get these videos. But yeah, anyway, you guys, great video by MrBallen as usual. Let me know what you guys thought about this down in the comments below. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, be blessed, be your best, and keep down the stress. Bye, guys.